Math 3, Unit 7, Section 2. So today we're talking about converting circles into descriptive form so that we can find our center and a radius. So remember that a circle is a set of all points in a plane that are equidistant from a given point in the plane called the center. A radius is any segment whose endpoints are the center and a point on the circle. The equation of a circle in descriptive form, and this is what we used in 7.1, is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Once your circle's in descriptive form, the center, remember that whatever is with x, you would take the opposite of that in the parentheses. And so the center would be h, comma, and whatever's with the y, you would set that equal to 0, which would make it equal to k. And then the radius will be what? R. And so in your equation, since it's r squared, the way that you find your radius is by taking the square root of the n number, which gives you your r value. Okay. Are we okay so far? All right. So for the examples below, write each equation of the circle in descriptive form. State the center and the radius. So for these first, we're not going to graph them. We are just going to write them in descriptive form. And we're going to do that by completing the square. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get all of our x's together in a parenthesis. And so we have x squared minus 6x, and we're going to do plus our blank. Because remember, when we're completing the square, we take half of our b value, and then we square it, and then we put this number on both sides. Do you guys remember that? Okay, but if you notice here, we have the x's where we need to complete the square, and then we also have the y's. So I have y squared minus 2y plus blank. And then any number that is not an x or a y needs to move to the right side of the equation. And so this 4, we don't want this 4 on the side with the x's and the y's. And so when I move it, we would end up doing what? Good. We would subtract 4 to both sides. Okay, and so 0 minus 4 means on the other side of the equal sign I have a negative 4. Now, how many blanks are here? 2. So remember, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side of the equation. And so on the right side of the equation, I need 2 blanks because I have a blank for the x value that I'm adding and a blank for the y value. So here is my x blanks to be balanced and my y values to be balanced. Okay, so who remembers how to complete the square? What's my step here? Very good. Negative 6 divided by 2, which makes what? Okay, now what do I do with that negative 3 value? That becomes the number that goes in your square. Good. And so that's going to be x minus 3 squared. If I were to write out x minus 3 times x minus 3 and multiply it out, I'll end up getting back to this equation, okay? But what value goes on this blank or in this blank? We have to, what do we do to the negative 3? We square it. And what is negative 3 squared? Very good. So 9 is the value that goes in one of the blanks on each side of the equation. Okay, now what am I going to do next? Good, same thing with y. So we take negative 2 and we divide that by 2, and that reduces to be what?
Negative 1.
And what do I do with negative 1? Good, plug it into my formula. So that means I'm going to have plus, and I would write this as what? Good, y minus 1 squared. And then what do I do with this negative 1? I square it and it becomes positive 1. And so 1 goes into the blanks for the y's. Now, all of these numbers here added at the end, we combine those together and write them as one number. So -4 plus 9 is 5, and 5 plus 1 makes 6. So here now is my equation. And then the only other thing is that they wanted us to specifically state the center and also the radius. So what is my center for this equation? Very good. 3, 1. And then since r squared equals 6, how would I get the value for just r? Very good. And so we can end up writing the radius as just √6. Or you could put that into a decimal if you want to. But since we're not graphing it, I would just leave it as √6. Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, the next example. So, and I probably should have started with this on the other example, but anything that's not an x or a y needs to be moved to the other side. So what should I move over first? 16. Very good. So I'm going to add 16 over here to the other side. Okay, and now I'm going to set up my problem. So we start with our x squared. Okay? So x squared, and then what's my plain x term? There isn't one, right? So we don't have to complete the square for the x squared because there's no plain x term. And so you can just leave x squared like in parentheses like that. Okay? Plus. Yes, it's always going to be plus. And then what am I going to do? Y squared minus 4y plus blank equals, and what will go on the right side of the equation? 16. Good. 16. And then how many blanks will I need? 1. Why just 1? Very good. There's only 1 on the left, so I only need 1 on the right. And also, Destiny, to go back to your question, if this was a minus, it's actually a different type of graph. And so today we're only dealing with circles, and so it's always going to be a plus. But there are equations that do have a minus in between, but it's a different type of graph. Okay? All right, so what do I do to complete the square? Very good. -4 divided by 2, which is -2. So how should I write my equation up to this point? So we have our x squared, that's by itself, that we didn't have to worry about completing the square, plus, and then what's going to be in my next parenthesis? Very good. Y minus 2 squared equals, and then what do I do with that -2? We square it, and when we square it, it becomes 4. So 4 goes where? In each of those blanks. Good. And then we add all these numbers together here, which makes 20. So now we have our equation. What is the center? Very good. 0, 2, because nothing is with the x squared, so the x value is 0. And then for the y, when we set that equal to 0, we get a positive 2. Now my radius squared is 20. And so when I take the square root of 20, I should simplify that. So what does the square root of 20 simplify to be? So 20 breaks down to be 4 times 5, right? And then 4 is 2 and 2, so the radius would be 2√5. Okay, questions? All right, this next one, we are going to graph it and also put it into descriptive form. You will notice here that there is a fraction, but we are going to survive. We know how to add and subtract fractions, correct? Okay, the only thing we have to remember with fractions when we add and subtract is that they have what? Thank you. Common denominators is the correct answer. All right. So, looking at this equation, do I need to do anything before I start completing the square? Very good. All the x's and the y's need to be on the left, and any number that is not an x or a y needs to go to the right. Okay, good. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 16x to both sides. I'm going to add 5y to both sides. And I am also going to subtract 101 over 4 to both sides. So I'm just moving all my x's and y's to the left, my plain number to the right, and then now I'm going to rewrite everything in the correct form. Are we good? Yes? Okay. So my first parenthesis is going to be what? Very good. X squared minus 16x plus blank. Okay, my next parenthesis, so we're going to plus, is going to be what? Good. Y squared plus, good. Perfect. Equals. And then what will I have on the right side? Good. Negative 101 over 4. And anything else? 2 blanks. Why are we having 2 blanks? Good. We have to balance it. So if I'm going to add something to the left side, I have to add the same thing to the right. And so since I'm going to add 2 different numbers on the left side, I have to add those same numbers to the right in order to keep it a balanced equation. Okay, so now we will do what? Good. Divide by 2. So negative 16 divided by 2 makes negative 8. And what do I do with that negative 8? We write it in a square. And so since I'm dealing with the x, we write this as x minus 8 squared. How do I get my value for my blanks? What do I do next? We square that number, and negative 8 squared is? Good. So we're adding 64 to both sides. Okay, plus, next we have our y side. What do we do? Good, 5 divided by 2. Now that doesn't simplify, so I can just leave it as 5 divided by 2. If you want to change it to 2.5, you can. But for now, I'm going to leave it as 5 divided by 2. So in my equation, what is it going to be? Good, y plus 5 over 2 squared equals, and then what do I do with this 5 over 2 now? Very good, we square it. So I like leaving it like this when I'm squaring it because it's easy to square, and we have 5 squared is 25 and 2 squared is 4. So also notice that these both have the same denominators. Okay, so we have to combine these together. You have a couple options here. You can change 64 to have a denominator of 4, or you could add the 2 together that have the denominator of 4 and see what happens. So if I take negative 101 plus 25, what does that make? Negative 76. And does negative 76 divide evenly by 4? Yes. Okay, so it works out kind of nice, right? Yes. Okay, so that means that negative 101 plus 75 made negative 76 over 4, and negative 76 over 4 made negative 19, and then I have negative 19 plus 64. And so negative 19 plus 64 makes 45. Okay, so now I have my equation in descriptive form, which allows me to find the center. What is my center here? 8. And then you can write it as negative 5 over 2. In this case, because I'm going to end up plotting these values, I'm going to change this to be negative 2.5. All these things you can type into your calculator if you're confused at all to get your decimal. My radius, so since r squared equals 45, we take the square root of both sides. If you break 45 down, you get 9 and 5, 3 and 3, which makes 3 root 5. But is 3 root 5 going to help me with graphing? No. And so it's approximately equal to, and you can get your calculator out again, and I'm going to take the square root. I'm just going to put 45 in there because it's going to give me the same answer either way. And so that's approximately 6.7. Okay? You could have put 3 and then root 5 and you'd get the same thing. Okay, so now we're going to graph. How do I graph? What do I do first? Go to your center. So we're going to go right 8 and down 2.5. So my center is right about there. And then the radius is approximately 6.7. So we're going to just go 6 and then in the middle between 6 and 7. So from here, we're going to go up 1, 2, 3. So in each direction, you're just going to go 6.7. And it goes a little bit off the graph, but that's okay. And we can try to draw our circle the best of our abilities. Some of us, not so great. All right. You'll find on your homework that sometimes they might have inequalities here. And so remember that if it said less than, where would you shade? Inside. If it was greater than, you would shade outside, and then if it's equal to, it's just here. Was there a question?
On the first one, can you tell me what you got? It was an x plus 3, or was it
X minus 3. So whenever you have your half number, so if your half number is negative 3, it goes in as negative 3. If your half number is positive 3, it goes in as positive 3. All right, any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so this says, show that the circle with this equation is congruent to the circle with a center at 0, 0 and a radius of 5. Okay, could you write the equation of a circle with a center at 0, 0 and a radius at 5? Yes. Okay, what would that equation be? X squared plus y squared equals 25, right? Because 5 squared is 25. Good. Okay. What does congruent mean? Equal or the same. Okay? So, but this is not in a great form. Would you guys agree? Yep. Okay. So we are going to put it in descriptive form. Now, first of all, I noticed that all the x's and y's are on the right and the numbers on the left, and I don't like that, so I'm going to rewrite it and flip it around. Is that okay? All right, so I'm going to start by writing x squared plus y squared, and then I'm going to distribute the negative 2 through. Pay attention to like your signs. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times 2y is negative 4y equals 20. Okay, and then now we're going to complete the square. So what would I start writing to complete the square? Good. X squared minus 2x plus blank plus y squared, what? Minus 4y plus blank, good, equals 20, and then how many blanks? Plus blank, plus blank. I'm kind of running out of room there. Okay, so next for completing the square, what will I do? Good. Negative 2 divided by 2 equals what? Negative 1, so what's going to go in my parenthesis? x minus 1 squared. Because whatever that half number is, that's what goes in our parenthesis. Okay? And then we go back and we square this, and negative 1 squared makes positive 1. So positive 1 goes in each of the first blanks. Next, we take negative 4, and negative 4 divided by 2 makes negative 2. And so plus we have, what's in my second parenthesis? Y minus 2 squared. And then what do I do with the negative 2? Square it, and negative 2 squared makes 4. So positive 4, right? Negative times the negative is a positive. So 4 goes in each of my second blanks. And then we add all of that together, and what does that equal? Equals 25. Okay. So, and this says, if you look over here at the steps, it says, show the radius from the first circle is congruent to the radius from the second. And then 2, indicate the translation required to map the first circle to the second circle. So here is this equation. We're going to call that our first circle. And here is our, we're going to call that first. Here's our second circle. So as we can see, we've proven right here, we've done step 1, we've shown that each of the radiuses are the same. So wherever the center is, the radius is 5. So if they have the same radius, do you see how these circles, if translated, would go right on top of each other? Okay? So, and then the second step just says, indicate the translation required to map the first circle to the second circle. So how would this end up translating? What is this center? So this center is at 1, 2. So if you are translating it, and this is actually how we're supposed to write the translation, I think, is you take whatever the x is from your original, and then you would add 1 to it. And for the y, you would add 2 to it. If you just wrote, you know, translate up 1, or sorry, up 2, right 1, I would accept that as well. But this is the same thing. Do we have any questions? Okay, so we're going to do one more like this. This one, though, if you notice on this next one, it's not starting at 0, 0, which makes it a little bit more complicated, but not too bad. What is going to be this equation? How would I write it? Good. X plus 3 squared plus y plus 5 squared equals what? 9. Good. And so we're going to label this as our first circle. And then we are going to figure out the second circle. Again, I'm going to flip it around. So when I'm writing this one out, I'm going to end up with what? We're going to distribute the x through. X times x makes x squared plus 6x plus y squared plus 10y equals 135. Next, we're going to complete the square. So my parenthesis is going to be x squared plus 6x plus blank plus y squared plus 10y plus blank equals 135 plus blank plus blank. Okay, I think you guys could finish this on your own, but for time's sake, I'm just going to keep going through it. But up to this point, do we have any questions? Are we okay? All right, so we're going to take 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared makes 9. Okay, next, we're going to go 10 divided by 2, which is 5. Oh, and I forgot, what is my equation? Good, x plus 3 squared. Okay, 10 divided by 2 is 5, so my next one will be y plus 5 squared, good. And then 5 squared makes 25. 25 goes in my second blanks. And we have to add those numbers up together. 135 plus 9 plus 25 equals 169. Okay, so what is this center now? -3, -5. And so over here it says, show the center from the first circle is congruent to the center of the second circle. Did we show that? Are these centers the same? Yes. Okay, good. Step 2, find the ratio of dilation. What's a dilation mean? Making it bigger or smaller. Good. You guys remember this. So on the first circle, the radius was what? 3. Okay, so for step 2 here, all you're going to do is take the ratio of, or the radius of 3, and then we are going to put that over what number? Not 169, so good. R squared equals 169. We take the square root, and R equals 13. So the ratio dilation, it could be 3 over 13, or it could be 13 over 3. It didn't really say which way to go. Hold on. So going back to the original equation real quick, show that the circle with this equation is a dilation image of the circle with this center. So it sounds like it's starting with the original here, and it's going to this one. I think this might be actually be my first one, and this should be my second. So I would actually probably end up putting the dilation as 13 over 3. But honestly, either way, as long as you have the right numbers, you should be fine. Do you guys have any questions there?